Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining 7 Medical's webinar on Access 3.3 upgrade. My name is Lon Gordon and I will be your moderator for today's presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to start with a few administrative items regarding today's webinar and questions. If you have a question during the webinar, please type your questions into the questions window in the GoToWebinar control panel. All questions will be compiled in a frequently asked questions document, and that will be distributed to all attendees. If you have questions after the webinar, you may submit additional questions to access@7medical.com. All questions will be added to the FAQs. Today's presentation and materials will be emailed to all attendees. In addition, a recording of the webinar will be available on demand. A link to the webinar recording will be distributed with the presentation materials. Lastly, if you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, please feel free to use the questions or chat windows to let me know, and I'll do my best to help. Now, let's get started. I'd like to introduce Jim Mullen, our Director of Product and Partner Manager at 7 Medical. He'll be your presenter for the training today. All yours, Jim.
Thanks, Lon, and thanks to those who have joined today. Just as a reminder, we will be recording this and we'll be distributing out to all POCs in addition. So if there are follow-ups or questions or anything else, you can certainly pick up on those recordings and or email your Access@7 Medical team. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it just because we have quite a few items to obviously cover as part of our upgrade. And so one thing that I will be doing is I'll be going back and forth between the release notes that everybody should have received already and then the actual test environment that we'll be demonstrating today as well. So I will be kind of moving back and forth between these two, but I'll certainly make sure to call out my page number that I'm currently on as I navigate through the system as well, just so that, again, you can follow along if you've got a printout or if you've got the release notes printed out on your end as well. So just as a quick reminder before we do start, with any upgrade that we typically roll out, it's always best to clear your internet cache or your browser. Access does, for performance reasons, cache some information locally that just allows kind of quicker refreshes and page refreshes and things like that. So it's always best to clear your cache screen following or immediately following every upgrade that we do. So let's keep going and move on. And so I'll try to go in the order of the release notes in terms of the information. And so let me just zoom in one more level here so it makes it a little bit bigger for you to see. But one thing that we did is underneath the quick create form, so the account and the contact screen, you'll notice the zip code has automatically been fulfilled. And so we already do this on the normal contact and account form. We've added this to the quick form in addition. So again, I'm just going to drag this over to another monitor here just so that we can kind of follow along. And we'll certainly demonstrate that as well. So again, if I click on my plus quick create button and I wanted to quickly register a new patient, for instance, we have this little shelf that drops down. I can go ahead and type in my zip code, which will automatically default in my city and state as well. And then again, on that same note, you have that auto zip creation on the new account form as well. So whether you're creating a new insurance company, a new referring group, a new vendor, all of those can be tied directly to these quick forms as well. Staying on page 5 here, we have also added a new status reason to the contact form. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a patient contact. So I'm going to click on Jesse Johnson here. And you'll notice a new field on the form. If I scroll down underneath status reason, where you had active, you can click on this and now you'll have expired. So again, in the event that there's a death or anything else, you can actually expire this patient. Quick note on this, expired is an active setting. It's also underneath an inactive setting as well, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But ultimately, you are able to set a patient to be expired, but notice their chart is still activated, meaning if there's death certificates or follow-up work that needs to be done, I can still write to this record. There's also, if you go up on the top here, you have the option to deactivate a patient. If I click on deactivate, I'll now be presented with a status of expired or just inactive. And so I can inactivate this patient, or deactivate them rather. And once I do that, their contact form becomes read-only. So you have the option to do both. And then I'll also mention for those sites or those customers that are tracking ADT, admit, discharge, and transfer statuses. I'm just going to switch my form here to PHM, typically on a population health management form. They'll have a section called transfer statuses. So again, your pre-admit, your transfers, your discharge, anytime there's a death or an expiration of a patient, that'll all be listed over in the transfer statuses section of your form. Just keep in mind that when we receive in an expired status or a death, yes, that'll populate the transfer status over here to the right-hand side, and that'll also automatically update this status reason over here on the left-hand side of the screen as well. So I just wanted to make sure to point that out for those customers that are using ADT or integrated messages to update and visibly see those transfer statuses on the contact page. Going back to my release notes, I'm still on page 5 here. I'm going to go down, and for those customers that are using the care team portal, I'm going to stay on my page here, Jesse Johnson. You can either scroll down, or I'm going to navigate down to my preferences section. You'll notice 3 new icons across the bottom of my screen here. Reset password, resend password, and then print login info. So you always have previously, prior to this upgrade, you always had to come in, you had to click on these 3 ellipses, you had to run a start dialog, you had to run the dialog or run the workflow that reset the password, and then there was always a refresh of a browser that you had to do as well. Now you can simply just come underneath this section. If this patient needs their password reset, you can come in and you can click on reset password, which you can see here automatically will reset that temporary password field. The other thing that you can do is, as long as they have their username and their email filled out, which you have to do for a portal login anyway, you can resend this password immediately to that patient as well. The reason that this is becoming more important is because, as you'll see throughout this demo with interactive intake forms, these intake forms, whether they're imaging or non-imaging, meaning financial or HIPAA releases of information, can all be done prior to showing up for your diagnostic appointment in advance of that procedure. So again, the adoption rate of this care team portal is definitely increasing, whether it be patient-specific, referring physician-specific, and so forth. The other thing that you can do is we also have patients that are showing up for their procedure, and instead of filling out paper documents, the clients or the customers are setting up a kiosk or an iPad type approach where they're handing the information electronically to that patient. They're able to fill out that information electronically and submit that back to Access, again, without printing or scanning in any additional forms. If it's the first time that they're showing up and you're giving them a kiosk or a tablet to fill out this information, you may want to just actually go in here and print out this information. And so you can print the login information, and it'll just print, it's printing on my next screen here. It'll print just the URL that they have to go to, their login information, and then their temporary password, which will typically expire within 24 hours. Once they log in to that portal the first time, they'll be prompted to reset their password, and so they can discard this piece of paper. So that's nice in the event that you wanted to start to implement a kiosk type functionality inside of your clinic. Going back to my release notes here, scrolling down, I've now moved to page 6. You'll now notice, and I'm going to stay here on my patient. If I go back up to the top here, you'll notice a new eligibility drop-down value. And so if I go ahead and I'm going to open my health insurance policy form, I'm going to navigate down to my eligibility verification section. Underneath my new eligibility statuses, you'll notice a status option of not required. And so again, that status, in the event that it is not required, whether it be cash pay or anything else, will also pull through. Let me just say close, go back to my chart here, will also pull through to their appointment as well. So again, for Jessie Johnson, if I open up one of her appointments and I go underneath my billing section, that will pull through as well to this eligibility section of not required. So that a scheduler, when they go in and they open this up, they'll know that eligibility has not or is not required for this patient. I'll leave this page. Staying on page 6 of my release notes, I'm going to scroll down. There is an update to the Care Team portal settings. And so for those customers, again, that are using Care Team portal, I'm going to go ahead and sign into our test account here. Keep in mind your login page might look a little bit different because we do provide an SDK for this login page to be embedded directly into your website. So just keep that in mind as well. But when a patient logs in, or a care team, referring physician, or anybody else, they log into the Care Team portal, they'll have a new option underneath Upload Files to select DICOM. So instead of a lot of patients coming in, burning CDs, CD management, all of those types of things, you can have a referring physician and or a patient click on Select DICOM, and underneath here, you can have them choose either 1, 2, or multiple folders to upload their DICOM studies. So when I click on Upload, you can see here that you get this little prompt that says, confirm to upload 10 files. I'll click on Upload. One thing that it's doing is it's automatically parsing out that information. So you can see here that instead of, again, bringing in a CD for my visit, I'm able to upload that in a remote setting without a VPN or anything else. So it's 100% URL web-based, 0 client in addition. But now they might find, whether it's a referring physician or anybody else, when they upload their file, the date of birth might be wrong, the patient name might be wrong, and they may want to reconcile this automatically with their other images already sitting in their database. So now you'll notice a new link or a new icon over on the right-hand side of the screen that they're able to click, which allows them to manually edit their information, or they can select one of their orders down below, which will automatically update and reconcile their information as well. So you can see just by selecting the patient down below, it's already reconciled and updated my information, and it's automatically assigned a new accession number. So when I upload this, it'll automatically reconcile with the existing images inside of my PACS database. So there's no CD management or anything else. The other nice thing to doing this is they immediately, if I go over to my Orders tab, will have access to XIView, which obviously is the image itself. So they can click on that, launch out, view their image if they want to as well. And again, whether it's a patient, referring physician, or anybody else, they can certainly do that in addition. Just kind of a quick note, nothing new to this, but again, I just wanted to point this out because we have had questions on it, but you can or do have the option to share this record as well. You have an encrypted URL hyperlink. You can copy the link, email, text it, direct message it to another provider, another family member, another radiologist in the event that you wanted a second opinion or you wanted somebody else to look at that data. Obviously, you can do that directly out here. Again, it's a site setting. You don't necessarily have to roll that out. But based on security and what you allow or grant them access to, they can certainly do as well. I'm going to go back here to Axis. I'm going to go back to my dashboard, and I'm on the bottom of page 7 now on my release notes for those following along. But there's a new option for billing and coding individuals or users. So if I click on my MRI abdomen here, and I'm going to navigate away from my technologist quick order form, and I'm going to go to my billing and ordering form. In a prior release, if I scroll down here to sent to billing, we added the option to be labeled as to be invoiced for those that are either cash pay or you're generating flat fee invoice or capitated payments or anything else. You have a to be invoiced, but now you also have an invoiced setting or invoiced option. So underneath sent to billing, you have that option to label it as invoiced itself. I'm going to scroll down here. Now I'm on the top of page 8, and I'm going to switch back to my technologist form. And so you'll notice quite a few changes as it relates to the technologist quick order form. So when a technologist opens up a study let me just assign this to myself here. So when a technologist opens up an order to actually begin a procedure, they'll notice a couple of changes to this form, which we've obviously optimized for experience. And one of those is that you'll notice that the action buttons, send to dictate, placing an order on hold, access to the images, requesting addendums, have all been added to the header of this form, which is nice because as you scroll down on your form to fill out or complete data, you always have access to your action buttons. There's no having to search or navigate or move around to that form. So again, a really nice option to have those buttons available in your header as well. The other thing that we did, we just scroll down a little bit on this form, is we modified the layout of these fields down here below. Instead of 3 across, we modified it to 2 across. The reason that we did that is we just found a lot of customers had either smaller monitors or wanted to increase the resolution size of their browser setting, which ultimately just made these fields a little bit more difficult to read and or difficult to insert data into because they were a little bit squished on the form. So now by separating those out into a 2x2, you have a little bit more access to the information. It looks a little bit cleaner and it's a little bit easier to navigate as well. You'll also notice, if I scroll back up, we introduced in a previous upgrade this concept of quick text. And so again, for technologists and clinical users, typically they're typing in very structured or similar information every single time in the history of exam field. If that's the case, yes, you can always still type into this field, but we added this field, quick text, which again, you can correlate to many different fields in the system if you wanted to as well. But now you have an option to click on quick text. I have, based on an individual user setting, or you could deploy these in a group or team setting as well. But now I can go in here. Here are my quick text categories. So now if this was a normal exam, I could go ahead and have access to my normal templates. PML and shielded, I can go ahead and indicate that statement as well. If this patient was having shortness of breath, I could grab that, and again, you'll notice that you have the option insert patient name or any database field in here that you wanted to as well. So whether it was age, date of birth, the service that they were having, all of that can be inserted. Again, just to fill out a couple of additional ones here, you can build those, and when I click OK, all of that information will be populated inside of my history of exam field. So it's really nice, especially for technologists that don't like to do a lot of typing, but they utilize their mouse button extensively. Let's scroll down here. I am on the top of page 9. Let me just go back to my dashboard here. And I'm going to pull open, let's see. Oh. This new section that I just wanted to point out, that's called interactive forms. And so one thing that you'll notice is that we do have interactive forms that have been deployed. They can be utilized from a patient perspective, again, that kiosk or portal functionality that we mentioned a little bit as well, but now you can update your order form with interactive forms as well. So for instance, if I wanted to add an intake form to this exam, CT exam, I can grab the date and time that I'm filling this out. I can grab the specific form that I wanted to do. So in this case, it's my CT intake form. And when I save that, you can see here that it's an open form. Here's the doc date that requires me to do that. And then here's a link to the actual intake form itself. This has automatically been posted to their portal, to the patient's portal. So again, they can fill that out themselves. Or if it's a technologist or another clinical staff member, they can always click on that link and they have access to their custom intake form. So again, they can write off on this information. In this case, it's a technologist or a clinical person doing the actual intake of this document, so they can actually sign off on it. If there's a tablet or an iPad or anything else that you're handing to the patient, you can also flip it around and have them physically sign off on this as well. You can print directly from this form if you wanted to print this and give it to the patient if they requested a copy. Or if you actually complete the form, it'll show up inside their record for this patient as well. I'm just going to go back, return back to my form here, but you have interactive intake forms available on the top. Again, once it is complete, this status reason will change to complete. So you'll always have access to it, but once it is complete, it's in a read-only status. Scrolling down on page 9 of the release notes, I did want to point out a couple new fields that you'll have access to. Because this is mainly our diagnostic and imaging form, we've changed the provider field to be a little bit more relatable to diagnostic imaging individuals, meaning you'll now see it say radiologist, radiologist team. So as you're assigning this order, you have the option to assign it to a radiologist or a team of radiologists. So in this case, it might be an MSK team that you're assigning it to. You have the option to assign it to an external radiology group, an external radiologist, excuse me, and an external radiology group as well. So again, you have a couple of new options there. You'll also notice new options over to the right-hand side of the screen called Technologist and Technologist 2. So for anybody that's doing tracking, procedure tracking, time stamping, if they wanted to run reports based on which technologist did X amount of procedures or anything like that, you'll now notice the Technologist field will automatically insert based on the user that clicks on Send to Dictate. So again, typically the ones that are completing the study are sending this over to a radiologist or sending it to be dictated. And in that event, when I click on this button, it'll automatically populate the technologist field. So there's no manual step or anything else that the technologist has to do. That'll just start or begin to auto-populate. The other thing that you'll notice is Technologist 2. And so Technologist 2 doesn't automatically update, but typically or sometimes for ACR requirements or reporting standards, you may want to track an additional technologist, whether they helped or assisted in the procedure. You can always click on this drop-down and document that additional technologist directly from here as well. Okay. Let me see. Changes. I'm going to switch over here and go to our provider form. So now, as a radiologist logging in, you'll notice a couple of new items on this form. So if I navigate down to my history section, you'll notice a couple new columns in here above. So again, this will outline, let me just go down to all clinical history, but this will outline the history of the exam. You'll notice that I did complete the intake form. So if I actually click on this, you can see that we made these columns or these views a little bit bigger, just because, again, for those patients that have 25, 30, 40 different historic documents that you need to look through, you have a little bit more space to do that too. We separated out radiology from all intake, but once I click on that, you do have access to that intake form in here as well. So you don't have to pop out or review different PDFs or anything like that. You can just click on it directly from your view and preview that form. One reason that this is really nice for radiologists is because if you're tipping your screen to be more of a portrait style layout versus a landscape style layout, a radiologist would have access to all of their dictation information, their exam information, and their scanned documents via that preview section down below, all on their one screen without having to scroll or navigate on that form. So I want to point that out as well. We did increase the performance, not only on the provider form, but also as it relates to the technologist form as well. I'm just going to bounce over to the technologist form. In prior versions, we had what we called a workflow that ran behind the scenes once you clicked on this Send to Dictate button. Sometimes, depending on the activity that was going on within your server or on your server, if it was a very busy time, that workflow might have taken 1 to 2 to 6 seconds maybe to actually run and change the status itself, which meant that when a user clicked on this button and navigated back to their work list, sometimes that order remained on their work list without removing. We converted that to what we call a plugin, which ultimately means that that status change happens instantaneously. So now when you click on that button and the system refreshes back to your dashboard, that that order should never or no longer be listed on that dashboard. So again, it's just very nice that it'll always be removed. You have that sense of completion, and you no longer have to refresh your dashboard to just confirm that that has actually fallen off of your work list. Scrolling down here, one thing that, I'm going to open back up my order form. I'm on the bottom of page 10 of the release notes. But one thing that you will notice is that for those sites that are using the Process 1 and the Process 2 action buttons. So these are custom buttons that your individual site can configure. And again, based on security, those admin users underneath the site settings window can configure these Process 1 and Process 2 buttons. If you don't see these buttons, that means you don't typically utilize them, nor do you have them defined. But some places like to, for instance, arrive a patient. Arriving a patient will change that status reason from scheduled or begin procedure to arrived. You'll also notice that you have the option to arrive and close an order, meaning if I click on this, it'll change the status to arrive and close the order, bringing me back to my work list. You also have options to not close an image, meaning I could just go in, click on begin procedure, and when I click on that, it doesn't close my order, but it changes my order from scheduled to begin procedure without closing it. And you can see because I clicked on that and it is in begin procedure, it automatically made it gray or grayed that button out. I'm in begin procedure status, and I can now start my procedure. So again, it just gives a little bit more visibility to other external users to be able to look and see what status that order is actually in. Okay? So new Process 1 and Process 2 buttons have been added to that form. If you do need or want to talk through workflow with your implementation staff, definitely give them a call and they can assist in defining what those buttons need to be or what status they need to move those buttons into. Scrolling down, I'm on page 11 of my screen here, of my release notes, but I'm going to change back over to my provider form. For those customers or those radiologists that are utilizing the integrated speech recognition, so again, web-based nuanced speech recognition, to activate this speech recognition button, users always had to either click on this button or they could configure like their nuanced speech mic to be a hotkey on their speech mic setting. In order to click on that hotkey, the cursor had to actually be in this window. That's been changed so that the cursor itself can be anywhere on the form. So if you're navigating around, clicking on your images, if you wanted to preview a report or anything else, you always have access to click on that hotkey item without having to physically have your cursor inside of this window. The other thing that we've updated on the order forms, so let me just bounce back over to the technologist and quick order form, is we added, and we kind of covered this earlier, but I just wanted to further explain, on current environments for those sites that are using a little bit of a hybrid approach, meaning on-site radiologist and they're sending to an external radiology group, they have the option to choose now an external radiologist. And one thing that's nice is that this external radiologist is a contact in the system. It is not a user of the system, which means that if you have 20 radiologists reading off-site at a different location and you wanted to structurally map that information back to your reports, you no longer have to set up and or pay to have that provider set up as a user in the system. We can actually convert those to a contact and it'll work the exact same way. So their electronic signature, their information will be integrated directly back into this order. So it just helps as it relates to running reports, being able to create or set up your own radiologist in the system without having to pay for that extra license. Obviously is a nice caveat or a nice set to this workflow. Scrolling down, I did want to mention and go into, so now I'm on the top of page 12. For those following along, I wanted to go into interactive forms. So let me just go into interactive forms here. As I had mentioned, you can go in and you can actually custom create your own forms. So I'm just going to go in here and click on a form template. Based on security, you can actually go in, or admin users can go in and set up and create their own intake forms. So for instance, right now I'm on a form template and I've set up my own form. Here's the logo that I use. Here's all the information that I want to display at the top of the form itself. If there's text I need to insert, and then here are my questions. One thing that we did in terms of an upgrade was we increased the number of intake forms from 25 to 50. So now you could have a 2, 3, 4, 5 page intake form that has up to 50 questions on it. So I just wanted to point that out as well. If you do need a little bit more training administratively on how to set up these form templates, please make sure to reach out to your implementation team, and we're happy to facilitate that as well. On these intake forms, if I just go back, I kind of already mentioned it in a previous statement, but you do have the option to print out these forms now directly from the intake form screen as well, and as does the patient who may be accessing it from the care team portal as well. So again, bouncing over here to the care team portal, I just wanted to point out that again, logging in as a patient, I have this section called Interactive Forms. When I click on that link, you can see here that here are all of my intake forms that I've completed, that I have access to. If I did not complete these, this status might say open. I would have the option to click on that link, and then here's where I could go in and actually fill out that intake form. So again, doing all of this either as a referring physician, care team member, family member, and or patient is something that you can definitely do directly from here. They can print it and they can close it directly from there as well. Let me bounce back to my default scheduling approach. We also added interactive intake forms to the service activity as well. So now, when I open up a service activity, just like a technologist has access to intake forms, you'll notice a new tab on your form, if I click on this, called Interactive Forms. And so you'll notice that again, here's the interactive form that specifically needs to be completed for this procedure. And again, if you wanted to create an alert indicating that front scheduling staff that there was an intake form that has to be completed, you can create that as a parent alert or a parent measure. It'll alert that user that there is an intake form available. And again, whether it's the scheduler flipping around a monitor or a screen or a tablet for the patient to complete, or if it's something that they're completing, they can click on that URL. They can have access to the entire intake form themselves. They can sign off on it, and then they can print it and they can complete it directly from here as well. One thing that's nice, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit on my release notes, but I think it'll make sense to probably point out here as well. But from a setup perspective, you now have the option to auto-generate these intake forms based on an individual service. So for instance, if I have 4 intake forms that I automatically have to complete as part of an MRI abdomen with and without contrast, you can auto-create those intake forms once this patient or once this appointment has been scheduled. So again, based on security, for those users that have access, they can drill into the service and they can go into linked CPT codes and they can create, let me just make this a little bit bigger, they can create a new service rule, which means that when they create a service rule, I can go in here and I can say, okay, anytime that this service, MRI abdomen without contrast, is scheduled, I do want to configure a form template for this service. So I'm going to click on yes to automatically create a form when this is scheduled, and you can choose which form that you want it to automatically create. Obviously, this doesn't make sense, MRI and CT, but now anytime this MRI is scheduled, it'll automatically associate a CT intake form to that procedure, and it'll automatically display, I'll just leave this, it'll automatically display for that scheduling staff underneath the interactive forms section. And just keep in mind, you can set up as many different service rules as you need to. And so if you do have 4, 5, 6 different intake forms based on that service, you can automatically generate those. Scrolling down here now, we covered, that was at the bottom of page 13, we covered the option to auto-generate that interactive intake form. So now I'm navigating down to the bottom of page 14. One thing that you'll notice is that I am actually operating out of Chrome. And so we're in a beta stage right now where we have a couple of customers that are testing out the Chrome interface for us. As most people know on this call, today or currently, XSys is supported only out of IE or Internet Explorer. There are advantages to converting over to Chrome, mainly being speed. And so right now, I'm, for instance, operating out of Chrome. If you're interested in testing this or trialing this in addition, definitely reach out to your XSys team members. The other reason that this is really important is because we're able to, out of Chrome, we're able to establish what we call a dark theme presence. So this is mainly used for a lot of the radiologists themselves that are sitting in a dark room looking at images with lights off, but also we acknowledge that a lot of technologists like to sit in a dark room when they're operating a CT or anything else. The white contrast or stark contrast of this screen can be a little bit difficult on their eyes. And so from a radiologist perspective, again, we have a Chrome add-on that we've developed. And so out of my Chrome browser, I can click on this little 7-medical icon, and I can toggle back and forth between the two. But I can click on this, and it says Enable Dark Theme. And so if I click on this and just refresh here quick, you'll notice that I have access to the exact same information, but now I have access to a dark theme presence on my dashboard. And again, if I navigate over to the provider view, you'll see that it's a dark theme presence as well. Everything's kind of inverted. It's a little bit easier on the eyes for those users that are really sitting in a dark room having to read images or perform procedures or those types of things as well. So two main takeaways from the system kind of changes that we've incorporated in, one of those being support for Chrome, which again, we're still in beta version. We're going to continue to support IE, so that definitely doesn't go away. But again, we're going to give users the option to convert to Chrome as well, which they'll experience some performance enhancements, and for those users that want to convert over to a dark theme approach. So that'll be really nice for them as well. And again, you can certainly toggle and disable that dark theme approach if you need to as well. Scrolling down, one thing that we've added from a system level, dashboard level experience as well is the option to configure auto refresh. And so at an individual user perspective, if that's something that you guys wanted to configure, you can go ahead and auto refresh your dashboards every 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, based on your preference. So you can actually, underneath the user settings, go in and configure that. Just reach out to your implementation team, and they'll either do that for you, or they can show you exactly how to configure that auto refresh setting on your dashboard. For any users that are launching out to PACS, we have increased the PACS launch performance as well. So we've converted the PACS launch, instead of running synchronously, so meaning for those users that are auto-loading their PACS launch setting, instead of having to wait for the entire order form to load and then auto-launch to their images, we've converted that to launch in an async mode, meaning they both launch simultaneously. So ultimately what that means is for those users that are auto-launching to their image, the time has been reduced from anywhere between 10 to 15 seconds down to 5 to 6 to 7 seconds. So again, we've cut it mainly in half for those users that are doing auto launches. I'm on the bottom of page 15 on here as well. but we've added a radiologist recovery option. And so for those radiologists that are signing off inside of our system, I'll just bounce out here to our site settings. So this is configurable at a site level. Make this a little bit bigger. I'll go down here to this report delay send. We have had a couple of requests from radiologists. A lot of times they've called it like an oopsie setting, to where they might sign off on an order and immediately remember something that they didn't include or notice an error or something like that. And they've always wanted to pull that back, make the adjustment without having to create an addendum. Now at a site level detail, you can actually go in and set, and again, this is administrative settings only, but you can go in and configure a delay to be turned on. And you can see here that the delay send time is 10 seconds. So for instance, I can click on sign complete, go back to my dashboard, I can reopen that as long as it's within that 10-second window, make a change, and that clock will kind of start over, so you don't have to finish your change in that 10 seconds. But you can open that order back up within that 10-second window, make the change, and then sign off on it. So again, it gives you that flexibility to make that change within that window, and you can customize what that window is, whether it be 5, 10, or 15 seconds. But ultimately, that is something that you just need to make as a decision within your site, because it could just delay the sending also, obviously, of that study as well to whoever that referring group or referring physician might be. Sorry, not 5, 10, or 15 seconds, 5, 10, or 15 minutes. So again, in the event that you wanted to potentially or think it's okay to delay a report to a referring physician 10 minutes after the fact, that's fine. You do have the option to overwrite these for stat cases and or the option to overwrite these manually as well. So in the event that a radiologist wants to go ahead and automatically send this procedure, so let me go back to an order here, and I'll go down to my exam details. They do have the option to overwrite this and automatically send the report without having to wait for that time delay. So a new option there for radiologists. I'm going to go back here to my dashboard setting here. And one thing that we changed was on the activity forms and fields. So one thing that you'll notice is that when I click to open, let's just start a new task, one thing that we changed was the layout of a lot of these activity forms. So between task and phone call and email and fax and those types of things, you'll notice that the general layout of the form has been reconciled between all of the different entities, so that they should look and feel relatively the same or close to the same depending on what form you're actually opening up. So for instance, you'll notice assignment description, details, and then any additional information over on the right-hand side of the screen. So that's on a task. If I open up, for instance, a phone call, you'll see that it's relatively the same. I have assignment description, my details, but because phone call is a little bit unique, has a few more fields, meaning call from, call to, that wouldn't otherwise exist on a task, for instance, you'll see those variable information or that variable information over here on the right-hand side of the screen. The other thing that you'll notice is that we also added the quick text option to these task forms as well. So again, typically when a lot of users were opening up a task, they're generally the same or similar tasks that they're creating every single time. In that scenario, you can go ahead and click on quick text. I have CD management, for instance, phone call example 1, go ahead and submit that, and then save and close, and you're done. So again, it's just nice to have that additional quick text option without having to retype in that message every single time. Additionally, for users that are utilizing the scheduling component and they're receiving in integrated SIU message or order messages from third-party systems, when that's occurring, typically they're on a different scheduling form. They're typically on the request form. But a couple of things that you'll notice. You have service and order on the form. Previously, when you had to associate an appointment with an order, you would have to click on this order button to assign an associated order. previously in older versions, that actually showed all orders for that patient, whether they were complete, canceled, scheduled, pending, or anything else. Now we've revised that to convert that dropdown to only display anything that's requested, meaning hasn't been scheduled, hasn't been finalized, hasn't been canceled, that has been requested and needs to be associated with a scheduled event. The other thing that we did is we flipped these two around so that if there are multiple procedures that are both in a requested status, one might be an X-ray and one might be an MRI, when you click on this drop-down field, this little box that displays down here below no longer covers the service field. In previous versions, we flipped these around, so when you clicked on that field, it would actually hide the service name. Now that that's been flipped around, you can easily see what's the MRI and match the associated procedure very easily now by clicking that there. The other changes that we've made, again, this is only on the request form, so anybody that's receiving an inbound message from like a master system, you can see that you have visit ID, so again, that'll be mapped from a third-party system, and the time that they were admitted as well. So again, if it's coming from ER or anything else, you have admit time that can automatically be mapped over in addition. Scrolling down here, we did touch on the interactive forms. We touched on the lookup, the request forms. Navigating down now to, and that should be it. That was the last button, or the last page on the workflow, is in regards to the task form and those edits that we made. So that should conclude the kind of brief walkthrough of our Access 3.3 upgrade. So at this point, I will pause for questions and turn things back over to Lon to see if there were any that came through.
Thanks, Jim. Right now, we don't have any questions, but I'll wait just another minute in case there are any. If you have a question, please type your question into the questions window. Okay, Jim, I think that's it. As there are no further questions, this concludes our webinar. We'll be sending out to all attendees the webinar materials and a link to the recording online. If you have any additional questions afterwards, please submit to access@7medical.com. Thank you and have a great day.